movie nerds, and welcome back to Cinematic Sarcastic, a podcast that talks all things movies and television. I'm Natalie, and I'm your host. On today's episode, I thought we might do things a little bit differently. I know we've been kind of mixing it up a little bit here. So very recently, there was this sort of comedy, spy, thriller movie that came out in theaters. Everyone has been talking about it, so I am sure you guys have heard of it, and it is the movie Argylle. Now, there has been so much sort of ridiculousness around Argylle for the better part of a year, if not more than that, that I really just didn't have any interest in going to see this film. I think that the steps that the director took in kind of just blatantly deceiving his audience in a number of different ways, it just left this very sour sort of taste in my mouth. So I know that they hired a long time ago. This would have been last year, sometime early last year, if not before then. They hired a thriller or spy novelist who is in the UK to slap together this book, this fake book by this fake author, Ellie Conway. They actually did hire a legitimate author to write the book for Argylle. But the entire time that they were promoting the film, they pretended as though Ellie Conway was legitimately an author, that these were legitimately books that they had bought the movie rights to, that Argylle, the movie, was based on the fourth book, and all of that was complete BS. The author that actually wrote the book for Argylle did not write a series of books for Argylle. Her publisher contacted her after the fact. So after the movie production was already kind of underway, she was contacted to write this sort of novel based on the character Argylle. And the novel, to what I understand, is just as much of a dumpster fire as the movie is. So to me, that's not something that I want to give my money to or that I want to support in any way. Not to mention that the movie is getting pretty poor reviews from critics and audiences alike. So I honestly thought in this episode, instead of writing a review about Argylle and telling you how much that I just did not enjoy the film, I would give you guys a list of similar type films that I think you would better spend your time with. So I thought we would sit down and kind of talk about adventure spy movies, comedy spy movies that I very much enjoy, that I think would be great to spend a weekend watching or spend an evening watching if you need like a good fun date night or something that isn't contributing to Argylle and the mess that is Argylle. So I think that we are just going to jump right into it. And right out of the gate, I wanted to mention some sort of more serious adventure, comedy, spy movies, if you guys are into something that is a little bit more serious. And in that category, I would say Night and Day with Tom Cruise and Cameron Diaz is an excellent one. I think that one is, again, a little bit more on the serious side. It does have comedy elements to it, but because it is Tom Cruise, you know, he's not going to be like ridiculous in it. He is the more serious character. And I think that Mr. and Mrs. Smith, the original, not the remake that just came out, because we don't do that here. The original one with Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie, I think, is similar in that vein with Night and Day. That one, of course, I think everybody is pretty familiar with, that has Brad Pitt and Angelina, who are these sort of undercover agents, and neither one knows that they are an agent and they are a married couple. And so it's kind of them discovering that each other is an agent and some of the hilarious things that happen through that. I think that True Lies is also a really great one. This one is an older one. I know that they did a remake of it. I did an episode about the remake version, I would not recommend that one. I would recommend the original with Arnold Schwarzenegger, where he is an undercover agent. And again, very similar to Mr. and Mrs. Smith, his wife kind of figures out that he is an agent, and she kind of gets wrapped into this case that he is working on with this sort of criminal enterprise that he is trying to take down. I think that True Lies is hilarious. Jamie Lee Curtis, my favorite scene in that movie is like Jamie Lee Curtis, where she's supposed to do this sort of sexy dance with Arnold Schwarzenegger, but she doesn't know it's her husband at the time. And there is this particular part where she like grabs onto the bedpost and flings herself backwards and loses her grip and falls on the floor. And I laugh out loud every single time. I absolutely love it. I think that kind of along the same lines as that one would be the movie Romancing the Stone. This one is with Michael Douglas and Kathleen Turner. I think Danny DeVito is also in it. Romancing the Stone, I think, would be kind of more similar to The Lost City, I think, is the one that just recently came out with Sandra Bullock and Channing Tatum, where it is kind of along the same lines as Argylle as well. It's this woman who kind of ends up out in the middle of nowhere, and Michael Douglas has to sort of help her get back to civilization. Now, this one isn't necessarily a spy movie because Michael Douglas isn't a spy in it, but it is along the same vein of that sort of action adventure, finding yourself in a situation that you wouldn't normally be in and needing the help of like some rugged person to fight your way through the jungle, I think is very similar. And Romancing the Stone is just hilarious. Anything pre like 2000, I typically always enjoy a lot more than modern day movies. But if you are looking for something that is a little bit more ridiculous, I hear that Argylle is a lot more ridiculous. Like, I've been hearing some things about them, you know, shooting bullets in the shape of a heart, and just, you know, just Henry Cavill's ridiculous hair tells me that the movie is ridiculous. But if you're looking for something that's a little bit more silly, a little bit more obnoxious, then one that I would recommend is Top Secret. Again, this is like a 1980s film. It stars Val Kilmer. He plays kind of an Elvis type character that is not in any way, shape, or form like legitimately an agent, but he gets roped into doing a lot of undercover like sort of operations, and it is hilarious. It is, I think, more along the lines of something like Spy Hard with Leslie Nielsen, who is just ridiculous. You know, if you've ever seen just the cover for the movie of Spy Hard, he is the sort of secret agent and he has his pants down and you can see like his boxer briefs underneath. But it's that kind of ridiculousness. I tie sort of Top Secret into the category of Austin Powers, which I think are also excellent spy comedy films, but I tie it in sort of with that, where it's just sort of unhinged hilarity, not necessarily meant to be serious in any way, shape, or form. And the last movie that I think would be great as an exception to watching Argylle would be Get Smart, and it would be any of the Get Smart movies, the original ones, of which I think there were 2 that came out, and then the 2008 sort of remake of Get Smart with The Rock and Steve Carell, I think is an excellent choice as to something to watch other than Argylle. I don't think that the remake for Get Smart was received very well, but it is one of my personal favorite of just sort of that ridiculous comedy that you're not meant to necessarily take seriously. I love Steve Carell. I think he's hilarious. Him and Jim Carrey are probably my top 2 like comedian actors that I just know if they're in it, chances are I'm going to laugh and like have a good time. And Get Smart is one of those ones that I know it's like ridiculous, and I know that some people don't find it particularly funny. I do. It is my sense of humor for sure, and it just makes me laugh the entire way through. I think that Steve Carell is ridiculous, and I love his sort of cone of silence that doesn't necessarily work, but he's like using this cone of silence to shout and like be all excited about getting made into an agent, and then it turns out everyone can hear him in the room. It's just that sort of embarrassing type of humor that I very much find hilarious. So those are all my recommends for movies that I think you guys should watch if you are looking for a spy comedy and don't want to spend your money on Argylle. I would love to know your thoughts if you have watched any of these films. Subscribe if you want to join the Movie Nerd family, and I hope to see you in the next episode.